Ever get the feeling you've been lied to? That moment when you realize someone's been telling you black is white, up is down, and the economic black hole they've been banging on about for months is actually a surplus. Well, Patrick Chrystis has had enough, and he's just delivered an absolutely blistering takedown of Keir Starmer and his government that's left number 10 reeling. The GB News presenter went nuclear on social media, calling this the most deceitful government in history, and declaring everything is a lie. But before we proceed, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more updates on the UK political insight. Thank you. Strong words, but here's the thing. He's got receipts. From Rachel Reeves' dodgy budget numbers to Starmer's humiliating confession about the migrant crisis, the evidence is stacking up that this government has been playing fast and loose with the truth since day one. And Patrick Chrystis just said what millions of people are thinking. Buckle up because this is going to be absolutely savage. Let's start with Patrick's opening salvo, because it's an absolute scorcher. He took to X, formerly Twitter, and declared this is the most deceitful government in history. Everything is a lie. Now, when a primetime broadcaster on a major news network makes a statement that strong, you've got to sit up and pay attention. This isn't some random person ranting on the internet. This is someone who spends every day analyzing policy, interviewing politicians, and cutting through the spin. And his conclusion is that this government lies about everything. That's not partisan hackery. That's observation based on mounting evidence. And what prompted this particular explosion of frustration? Well, it's a combination of Rachel Reeves' budget shenanigans that we've covered extensively and Keir Starmer's latest confession about the migrant crisis that basically confirms everything critics have been saying for months. Patrick identified what he called a rare moment of truth from the Prime Minister. Rare. As in, truth from this government is about as common as a unicorn riding a skateboard. What was this miraculous moment of honesty? Keir Starmer admitting, "We have no deterrence in the Channel to stop the invasion of Britain." Let those words sink in. No deterrence. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom has admitted that we have nothing in place that actually stops people from crossing the Channel illegally. After years of political promises, billions spent on border security, endless initiatives and schemes and plans, the net result is absolutely nothing that works. It's like spending a fortune on a burglar alarm, only to discover it doesn't actually make any noise when someone breaks in. Completely and utterly pointless. But here's where it gets properly infuriating. Remember Rachel Reeves standing up and promising, "We will be ending the costly use of hotels to house asylum seekers in this parliament"? Remember that pledge? It was presented as a firm commitment. No more spending taxpayer money putting illegal migrants up in hotels while British families struggle to afford their heating bills. Except, and this is where Patrick really lets rip, it's now emerged that we're actually going to treble the cost of asylum accommodation. Treble, as in 3 times more expensive. Not reduce costs, not end hotel use, but make it massively more expensive. So Rachel Reeves promised to end costly hotel use and then proceeded to make asylum accommodation 3 times more costly. That's not just breaking a promise, that's doing the exact opposite of what you promised, while presumably hoping nobody would notice. Patrick then drops another bombshell that really highlights the absurdity of where we are. It's emerged that the Rwanda plan, yes, that Rwanda plan, that Labour spent months absolutely savaging as cruel, unworkable, and ineffective, was actually a greater deterrent than the current one-in, one-out deal with France. Let me say that again for the people in the back. The scheme Labour called barbaric and scrapped immediately upon taking office was actually more effective than what they've replaced it with. You couldn't make this up. The plan they claimed was a waste of money and wouldn't work was demonstrably better than their alternative. Which means either they knew this and lied about it, or they didn't know and are incompetent. Pick your poison. Neither option is good. Then there's Yvette Cooper's grand announcement about the French changing their rules to be able to intervene with the boats. This was presented as a major breakthrough. Finally, the French were going to step up and actually stop boats from leaving their beaches. Patrick's response to this promise? Well, that promise lasted about as long as her tenure as Home Secretary, didn't it? Sharing further fury that it never happened. Brutal, but accurate. Yvette Cooper has been Home Secretary for months now, and that French intervention everyone was promised? Still waiting. It's like being told your package is out for delivery and then watching the tracking stay stuck on processing for 6 months. The French aren't changing their rules in any meaningful way. They're not stopping boats, and Cooper's big announcement was apparently just more hot air. Patrick's conclusion cuts right to the heart of the matter. Today, he admits there's no deterrent. There is, Prime Minister. Stop the benefits, suspend asylum applications, and deport, deport, deport. Now, you can agree or disagree with that as a policy prescription, but the point he's making is crystal clear. There are actual deterrents available if the government wanted to use them. The problem isn't that deterrents don't exist, it's that this government refuses to implement them. They'd rather pretend there's no solution, throw their hands up, and continue spending billions on a system that doesn't work while illegal crossings hit record numbers. It's a choice, not an inevitability. And Patrick is calling that out in the bluntest terms possible. In his full comment piece on GB News, Patrick continued to hammer away at what he called Labour's lies, mirroring his statement on social media. This wasn't a one-off rant. This was a coordinated takedown backed up with specific examples of dishonesty. And the response from his followers was immediate and overwhelming. One user wrote, "There should be calls for a snap election now we know this government has deceived the public about deficit and taxation." That's referencing the Rachel Reeves budget revelations we covered earlier, where the OBR documents proved she knew the fiscal situation wasn't nearly as bad as she claimed. Another user raged, "All they do is deflect and blame absolutely anyone or anything else apart from themselves. When you thought the Conservatives weren't rotten enough." That last line is particularly telling because it shows people aren't defending the Tories, they're just pointing out that Labour somehow managed to be even worse. Let's connect the dots here, because this isn't just about one policy area or one broken promise. This is a pattern of behavior. Rachel Reeves claimed figures from the Office for Budget Responsibility would show tax rises were needed. She repeated this claim constantly in the run-up to the budget. Media outlets dutifully reported it. Voters braced themselves for painful but supposedly necessary tax hikes. Then the actual OBR figures were published this week, and they showed the opposite. There was no massive black hole requiring emergency tax rises. The fiscal situation was manageable. Reeves knew this as far back as September, but kept pushing the crisis narrative anyway. That's not spin, that's not political messaging, that's deliberate deception. On immigration, Starmer spent months claiming Labour had a plan to stop the boats. He attacked the Rwanda scheme relentlessly. He promised cooperation with France would solve the problem. Yvette Cooper backed him up with tough-sounding announcements about French rule changes and enhanced border security. And the result? Record crossings, no effective deterrent, billions more spent on accommodation, and finally an admission from the Prime Minister himself that they've got nothing. Again, that's not incompetence, that's lying about what you can deliver and hoping people won't notice when you fail. This brings us to the question Patrick and many others are now asking. If this government will lie about the budget numbers, if they'll lie about immigration policy, if they'll promise one thing and deliver the opposite on everything from hotel accommodation costs to tax pledges, what exactly can we believe? When Keir Starmer stands at the dispatch box and makes a promise, why should anyone take it seriously? When Rachel Reeves presents economic projections, why should we assume they're accurate? The government's credibility is shot, and we're not even a year into their term. That's actually remarkable when you think about it. Most governments get at least a couple of years before trust completely collapses. Labour managed it in months. Patrick Chrystis calling this the most deceitful government in history might sound like hyperbole, but when you actually look at the evidence, it's defensible. The gap between what they promised and what they're delivering is absolutely massive. They campaigned on protecting working people from tax rises, then delivered the biggest tax grab in decades. They promised to end costly asylum hotel use, then tripled accommodation costs. They claimed they'd stop the boats, then admitted they have no deterrent. They said the Rwanda plan was cruel and ineffective, then replaced it with something even less effective. At every single turn, the reality contradicts the promises. The opposition is now circling like sharks who've smelled blood in the water, and rightly so. Rachel Reeves will face pressing questions from politicians, media, and voters about why she breached manifesto pledges on tax without any good reason. Keir Starmer will be hammered on immigration at every Prime Minister's questions until he either implements an actual deterrent or admits he's got no intention of stopping the boats. Yvette Cooper will have to explain why her big French intervention never materialized, and all of them will struggle to explain why anyone should believe a word they say going forward.